The Ghoul sponsor is Jeremy Kidder, a delightful fellow who happens not to be a ghoul. In order to win, the Ghoul must gain Fury equal to 7 plus the number of players in the game, then escape from the cave. The Ghoul gains Fury by attacking others and collecting treasures. Let's set up. First, the Ghoul piece, Ghoul dice, and Ghoul discs are all placed near the player board. Now, we can shuffle the terror cards to form the terror deck. After that, the Fury cube is placed at the 0 space on the Fury track. At the start of the Ghoul's first turn, he is placed on any unoccupied dark tile. If no such tile exists, one is placed. The Ghoul is 6th in turn order, going after the thief but before the ghost. His turn consists of 3 phases: roll and set stats, move and act, and set defense. His turn ends after his 3rd phase. Phase 1. Roll and set stats. First, if the Ghoul has any discs on his attack space, they are removed and returned to the supply. Next, the 3 Ghoul dice are rolled. If the sum of all 3 dice is 7 or less, he draws a terror card. Next, he chooses 2 dice and sets aside the 3rd. The die with the higher value is the Ghoul's movement points for the turn. The die with the lower value is the Ghoul's attack points. Using movement points throughout the turn can be tracked with the die. As for attack, the Ghoul plays Ghoul disc equal in number to his attack point on the attack space. If attack points are ever gained, additional Ghoul discs can be added to the space. Then the die showing attack points is set aside. Phase 2. Move and act. Let's talk about movement. The Ghoul moves to an adjacent space by spending 1 movement point. He may enter both lit and dark tiles, but dark tiles are not revealed when he enters them. The Ghoul may spend an additional movement point to move through a wall. If the Ghoul enters a space with any number of other player pieces and he does not immediately attack, he must spend 1 additional movement point. If he enters a space with a player that he cannot attack, he must spend an additional movement point regardless of whether or not he attacks another player on that tile. As the Ghoul moves throughout the cave, he will try to gather treasures. He may spend 2 movement points to collect a treasure or dragon gem on his space. This is per piece collected. If a dragon gem is collected, the dragon die is rolled. The Ghoul skitters if the center tile is affected and the gem is returned to the dragon. Otherwise, a treasure token is taken from the cave supply and the gem is returned to the dragon. If a treasure token is collected, it is placed on the treasure space on the player board. During his turn, the Ghoul can choose to attack players on the same space. He does this by spending Ghoul disc equal to 1 plus the target's defense. The Ghoul cannot attack the same player piece more than once during the same turn. Whenever the Ghoul attacks, an effect is dealt to the player. For example, when attacked, the Goblin tribe must scatter. After resolving any attack, the Ghoul gains 1 Fury, then skitters. Phase 3. Set defense. However many Ghoul discs remaining on the Ghoul's attack space are now considered his defense. If no discs remain, then his defense is 0. Let's talk about Fury and Terror cards. Fury is the Ghoul's anger and power. He gains this whenever he attacks a player and whenever he has collected 2 treasure tokens. This cube is moved as he gains Fury, and on every even space, he earns a Terror card. Whenever a Terror card is drawn, it is placed face up near the player board. Each card has 2 effects, either a persistent or once per turn effect and a once per game effect. A persistent effect, like the first option on Cheat, allows the Ghoul to roll dice again. A once per turn effect, like the first option on Chase, allows the Ghoul an additional movement. If the Ghoul ever decides to use the once per game effect of a card, it is removed from the game. The Ghoul is not able to use both of a card's effects on the same turn. Additionally, he cannot use multiple once per game effects of an identical card on the same turn. Before we get into how other players affect our little friend, let's talk about this little thing you've heard so much about, the Skitter. After the Ghoul resolves an attack, or after he is attacked by another player, he immediately skitters. The player he attacked, or who attacked him, announces a dark tile symbol, fangs, bones, or eye. The announced symbol type must be in existence on the map, and one of the tiles must be unoccupied. The Ghoul then places his figure on any one of the unoccupied dark tiles of that type. If the attack did not involve another player, such as smashing a crystal in a game with no cave player, then the symbol is chosen by matching the symbol on top of the cave tile stack. During the collapse, a dark tile symbol is randomly selected using tiles that have already collapsed. If no unoccupied dark tile exists, he must be placed on an unoccupied space surrounding the entrance tile. Now, let's see how the other characters affect the Ghoul. First, after resolving any attacks or listed effects here, the Ghoul immediately skitters. The Knight can enter the Ghoul's space if her strength is greater than the Ghoul's defense. When she enters, she attacks. This attack can help her complete some of her quests. She may also shoot the Ghoul with her bow if her strength is 2 or greater. A Goblin tribe can enter the Ghoul's space if its strength is greater than the Ghoul's defense. When one enters, it attacks. The Goblin gains 1 rage, and the tribe does not scatter. The Underground Dragon can enter the Ghoul's space. The Surface Dragon can enter the Ghoul's space only if his armor is greater than the Ghoul's defense. He may also attack using Claw or Scratch. Claw counts as eating 1 Goblin, while Scratch counts as 3. In addition, when scratched, the Ghoul discards 1 terror card. Hiss does not affect the Ghoul. If the Ghoul enters a space with a flame wall, he skitters. The Unicorn can enter the same space as the Ghoul. When he enters, he attacks. If the Unicorn attacks when he has at least 3 anger, the Ghoul must discard 1 terror card. The Cave can target the Ghoul with soporific spores, reducing his fury by 1. The Thief can enter the Ghoul's space only if his stealth is greater than the Ghoul's defense. He attacks with Pickpocket or Backstab. Pickpocket. The Thief steals 1 treasure token, or the Ghoul must discard a terror card back into the terror deck, Thief's choice. Backstab. The Ghoul's movement during his next turn is reduced by 1 for each action cube spent. The cubes can be placed on the Ghoul's board as a reminder. One note, the Ghoul cannot be forced to move through walls or onto spaces that hold other players. This concludes our video on the Ghoul. Thanks for watching. The executive sponsor of this series is Mario Flores. The wall sponsors are Matt Wallis and David Dove.